Hello, this is Steve Probst with the 4C Conference. The 4C stand for Connect, Collaborate, and Contribute to Compliance. Today, we'll be connecting and collaborating with Marcelo Carugo of Emerson. Marcelo, tell us a little bit about your role at Emerson.
Yes, thank you, Steve, for having me here. I'm Marcelo Carugo. I lead refining, chemicals, and upstream team around digital transformation and operational excellence for Emerson.
Let's talk a little bit about the sustainability, Solomon Index, Energy Intensity Index. A company that's, say, in the fourth quartile of that, they're looking to get up in the third or second quartile. What types of things do they need to think about and look at doing?
Many companies are using the Energy Intensity Index as a way of understanding how much energy they utilize and how much against their other peers in the market. And so for people that are in the fourth quartile, normally they will have to do some capital investments to be able to get to a second quartile, for example, or first quartile. But what we have discovered over many years that we have been working with the refineries and petrochemical complexes is that with the technology advancements and digital transformation, it is possible to actually start doing some improvements in the Energy Intensity Index while these companies go through the CapEx cycles to take on larger investments to actually improve. And this way they pave the road to get to those capital investments showing results in improvements.
How about a company that's in the second quartile looking to get up into that first quartile? If they've already done the CapEx, what are the types of things that they do to take that next step?
So what we see in this area is that the incorporation of new sensors, new technology to monitor equipment that in the past probably was monitored by manual rounds is what is making the difference. So we see more monitoring of equipment like heat exchangers, automatically monitoring them, or pumps and cooling towers that start making a difference in getting into these fine points between the first quartile and the second quartile, as well as also making improvements in the generation, for example, fire heaters combustion as well. That's another area that they can make a good improvement, for example.
So that leads to the top quartile. What are the types of things that companies in the top quartile are doing or have done that got them all the way up into that top quartile and able to maintain and sustain that top quartile performance?
Well, that's an interesting question because you know that the top quartile performers over the past several years have been improving. And the top quartile is not something fixed, but it's a moving tag that it keeps improving itself, right? And they are the ones that are really leveraging technology the most. They are normally the first adopters of technology. I would say big data, analytics, machine learning, improvements into their plants. What we see nowadays more is as sustainability targets are more common among all the hydrocarbon industry, we see a need for actually having automation of these targets because there are a few KPIs from the point of view of sustainability, but there are hundreds of sub-KPIs that you need to keep track in a refinery to make this happen. And nowadays, in many cases, you still find Excel files tracking them, right? And to be really effective and to have traceability, verifiability, and compliance of the same, you actually need to have a single source of truth. So we have been working with companies around using data lakes for that purpose, and then having visualization to have online tracking and decision making on these KPIs, for example.
Fantastic. Yeah, you never get to a result without having the right KPIs that got you, that get you to the result. So what are some of those individual KPIs? What are some of the technologies that lead to those KPIs? Or is the first quartile performance really more about the culture of the organization and a culture of becoming a first adopter, a culture of having KPIs?
Yes, there are several components, right? And technology is one of the pieces, right? But the culture and the people, the expertise are the other legs of the stool that you need to have, right? And certainly I think that a big difference between the first quartile and the other quartiles is that the culture and the implementation and the use of the technology is a big difference. And that's what really pays dividends to them from this perspective.
So there's a difference between buying a technology and adopting a technology culture?
Yes, for sure.
And still the key to the technology isn't the technology itself, but the people that implement that technology?
Yes, and the utilization on the day-to-day basis, right? Because the reality is that you can have the best technology, but if your team is not really utilizing completely and on a day-to-day basis, that's not getting you to the first quartile. You really need to adopt it at all levels, implement it, and actually control it, right? Like you say before, if you are not measuring, it's difficult to control, right? You cannot control it.
Yes.
And to make this virtuous loop happen, you really need to have all these things into your culture and your people.
What's the key to, I'm a plant manager. I aspire to be in that first quartile. I want to understand the daily behavior of my personnel so that they adopt the technology, they implement the technology, they understand it. Are there any elements of the Emerson program that facilitate the adoption and maintenance of that type of culture?
Yes, of course. I think that if we look at these, we have helped people, for example, companies, to move from a third quartile to a top second quartile over a period of time. And this was the adoption of the technology, but the training of the people to actually use the technology, as well as the cultural change of the company. Because, for example, for some of the new technologies, you have to change the standard operating procedures to actually make that happen, right? And that's a step that sometimes is overlooked. We think that the technology is there, is implemented, you have a group that really is sponsoring this, but then the whole organization is not adopting it, right? So it is a process. It is a process that takes some time because nobody gets to the first quartile in a year. But really, I think that I like what you mentioned, right? If you have a plant manager that really wants to do this, what needs to do? Well, it starts all with him as well, right? Him or her, because it is important that from the top down, there is commitment to make this thing happen, to transform the culture to really get into this top quartile, continuous improvement type of culture, adopting technology, incorporating that, and using that to the full extent that the technology allows. And then looking for what is the next envelope that we need to go after, right? And that's what first quartile companies are doing. That's why they are moving this bar every time, every year.
What makes a successful implementation, a successful adoption, a successful partnership between Emerson and that company?
Well, one element that I think I mentioned briefly in my previous answer is that the change management, right? I think that the change management is a key element of making this happen. And we have a group of consultants that work in that area and collaborate. This could work different ways with different plans and their desire or the internal groups how to make this thing happen, but we can help them actually go through this change management process. We can do the management of that process for them or be a support to them. But the champion needs to really lead a change management process to really be effective at doing this. And then is consistency. And this is why also it's important to have the top of the plant being the sponsor of this, because you need to have consistency over time to make this thing happen. And you need to celebrate every little victory that you have every month, so you keep the people engaged and enthusiastic about going after the next one and the next one, right?
Sounds like you've got your own set of 4 C's. There's the celebration, there's the change, the management of change, and this consistency.
Consistency, yeah.
So those are all elements of driving that change long term, right, going from the types of daily behavior that lead to fourth quartile performance, contrasting that with the types of behavior that are in the first quartile.
Right.
And some of those are celebrating success, consistency, and managing change.
Yes.
So that's a super exciting. It's super.
It
sounds like it's a lot of fun once you get into that process.
It is, and helping companies going through that process is also a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's really seeing how people are making this road and improving in that area is great. It's great for our teams to be engaged and be partners with other companies in doing this.
Yes, that sounds really exciting to be a part of either a company going from fourth quartile to third to second, or being a part of the first quartile performance and honing that, as you said. So what was the original standard and where are they today? How far have we come and how far can we go?
From the original standard, for example, on the energy intensity index to where we are today, new technologies around processes have helped improve at least 30% this standard in the refineries. Where it can go, that's a question that I don't know. I think it's going to improve with time, but it's going to be, again, something that will go through the improvement of the processes. And there are new processes that different companies and universities are pushing the envelope in that area, and we will see in the next 5-10 years where it can go.
We've talked about energy intensity index and the Solomon index and sustainability. How do all those things tie together from a plant manager's perspective or a CEO or board of directors perspective?
So that was a great question, Steve. I think companies have been working on the energy intensity index for quite some time. Now, improving the energy intensity index reduces the energy you use in the refinery, and that reduces emissions. And in this new world that we are having more and more regulations around emissions also helps reduce penalties, and it helps really you to have a better sustainability rating in your company.
So when we improve the energy intensity index, energy is one of the largest costs. We improve our efficiency. We also improve compliance. That's all part of the sustainability umbrella. Now, does that also affect the Solomon index? How does the Solomon index tie into those elements of energy intensity index and sustainability?
Well, Solomon has a variety of KPIs for a refinery, right? Between 27, 26 different KPIs. And the energy intensity index will impact favorably in many of them, right? So if you improve that one, you will get improvements in many of the other ones as well. So yes.
If we have a fantastic culture at our facility, focused on efficiency, focused on energy intensity, focused on emissions, we'll end up with an amazing Solomon index also.
You will have that, and as well you will have better financial results, of course.
Thank you for your time, Marcelo. Thank you for sharing your expertise with the 4C community.
Thank you, Steve. It was a pleasure.